Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Ay, still not understanding.
Hey, my sunshines. So it is Monday. How's everybody doing today? I hope you guys, your week is off to a great week. We had a busy weekend, so this is a chill day. I did go to the health club earlier today. Took my aunt around, run her errands, and now I'm back home and said, you know what? Let me turn on the camera and let's have a chit chat. Let's chat. We created this channel, and I told you guys I had a lot to talk about, and I want to discuss, life with you all. Not life first of all, it's therapeutic. And second of all, it is a method for me in a way of connecting with people like you to help you get through your obstacles in life, and also help give you hope for what tomorrow brings. So let's start way back when. Maybe 2000. 2000, maybe like 2001. About 2002. Fresh out of college. Was 21? Born in 97. Shoot. Yeah, I was about 21, 22, almost 22 years old. Before this marriage, I was married before. I met someone who was 8 years older. I'm not gonna say any names because it doesn't matter. I'm saying all of these things so that you can connect with the human side of me. It's my level of transparency for my life, things in which I've been able to overcome and get to the space that I am in today, okay? Nevertheless, I met a guy who was 8 years older than me, and at the time, at my capacity, in my mind, I was meeting what I thought was the man of my dreams. Swept me off of my feet, all right. But he was older, so he was, I would say, from a life perspective, he had experienced more things, so he had different level of wisdom. It wasn't that he was more mature, he just had a different level of wisdom than I had. And obviously he was great at manipulation. So at the time, I thought that, he was great because, he cooked, he cleaned, and in my mind at the time, he catered to me. And I'll tell you why he catered to me. He catered to me because he didn't have a job. So he was always present for me. I thought that the going story was he had gotten injured at work and he had just had knee surgery. So he was off work dealing with a knee injury, and going to have surgery on said leg. And so that was why he wasn't working. But listen, it took him forever to go back to work once he had the surgery, and never went back to that job because he said that he got let go from that said job. I don't really know what the story was. Come to find out years past, he just had a problem with working. He was not a guy he was not a provider. He was not, that wasn't his forte. But at the time, remind you, I was 21, 22 years old. So I didn't necessarily know the signs and the questions to ask. At my time, he was a great companion, and he was present, and he was engaged, and he catered to me from I'm gonna cook for you, I'm gonna clean for you, and all the things. Now at 22, it must have been 22, I had it going on. I had a great job. I had my own house that I was not renting, I purchased. I was bringing something to the table, and I didn't have kids at the time. I had going on for a 22-year-old. And I look back now today, my daughter's 20. I was definitely in another mindset for being 22. I had a great time. I went out, I had fun. I was living the life of a more advanced, more mature 22-year-old. So he would come to my home, and he would cook, he would clean, he was there. He would pick me up again in my car. I didn't say that I was, looking back in hindsight, a little slow, obviously, not slow from the perspective where, why don't this man have no car? Why don't he have his own house? Why was he living at home with his mother? Questions that my today's self would ask. I wasn't asking then, because he had a line and a story for everything on why things, were working the way he worked. And remember, he was a master manipulator. Nevertheless, he proposed. He got a payoff from the injury that he endured. So he bought me an engagement ring, and next thing you know, we were getting married. Now, let me say this. In the engagement, I knew that this was not the man for me. Even called my mother and my godmother and told them that I really needed to call off this wedding. Now, mind you, we had a venue. I think at this time we had even sent invitations out, but I knew he was not the one. He was crazy. He was very, very jealous-hearted, and I recall, like, how out of area, I don't know if you remember landlines and caller ID. The caller ID would often say, out of area, and there would be no phone number that would come up. Never private, but out of area. Those were toll-free calls. He would accuse me of having men call the house for me and blocking their numbers. So really, really, really jealous-hearted, crazy. And now I know that when people are like this, it's because of what they're trying to hide in their lives. But back then, I just thought he was just, I walked on eggshells because I didn't want to set him off, thinking that I couldn't be trusted, right? Thinking I was going to lose the prize, I guess. I don't know. Clearly, leave. I was the one. I was the financial provider. I was the one with a home. I was the one that had everything in this relationship to offer, right? So let him leave. But I thought I was going to lose something. Nevertheless, my parents supported me and you should call off the wedding. And if you know something is not right, don't do it. Nevertheless, he swindled me into keeping the wedding on, and things were going to get better. All the broken promises. And so I went along with the wedding. Kid you not, the day of the wedding, I knew walking down that aisle that I should not be walking down that aisle. But again, my pride prevented me from canceling that wedding. So I went on down that aisle and I got married, right? That was in the summertime of said year. We'll just say that, the summertime. By January, right, I was pregnant. Mind you, I knew that this wasn't right, okay? But I was going with emotions, going with the flow of things, trying to make it work, because I did get married and I made a promise and a vow to God, and I was giving it all that I physically had, right? And let me say this. Although he was a master manipulator, although he was jealous-hearted, he was still a nice person. He had a good personality, and he came from great bones, great family. And I loved his family. But I knew that something wasn't right. And no matter how much I loved him, that my love wasn't enough to change this man, right? So I was working and going through the process. You know how we do. We stay, but we have a game plan in mind. And I knew that if he didn't get right, that eventually I was gonna leave. But I stayed. Then I got pregnant. And I was happy because I was having a baby and I was married and we had a house, and on paper it looked right. It looked right. On the outside, to the world, we were in a good place, right? I was married. It looked like I had so what they thought on the outside, a really good husband. So that's what they thought, right? Because he played his part very well. And it looked like it was the perfect, ideal couple. We have a good way. We as women have a good way of hiding things and shielding the true light of what things are. It wasn't right. But when I got pregnant, he became even more, I won't say protective, but crazy. So much so that I was a couple months and he hit me. And I knew then, oh no, this was not gonna be what life for me and my baby was gonna look like. And I don't know, when he hit me, I don't know then that I knew that I was carrying a little girl, okay, Layla. I didn't know that then. But I found out I was having a girl. And by this time, he had hit me once, but he had also shaken me really bad. And when he shook me, at that point, I knew I had a girl. Now, I didn't have Layla until September, because remember, I found out I was pregnant in January. I had her in September. But at that point, I knew I got to get out of this. I got to get out of this. So we had come up on our first year anniversary, which that first year was traumatic. It was terrible. I had severe hyperemesis. For those of you who don't know, I stayed sick throughout my pregnancy. Even had PICC lines installed because I couldn't keep anything down. I really thought it was because I was stressed and I was carrying all of this hurt and pain and fear and shielding it from my loved ones, because I couldn't tell my mother and my dad what this man was doing to me, because they would hate him. And at the time, I didn't know what I was gonna do, so I didn't want the world to hate him, just in case I forgave him, right? But by the time I had Layla in September, I knew, fast forward to that next New Year's, that New Year's after I had Layla, I didn't spend New Year's Eve with him. I will never forget, I went to my godmother's house, and I knew then, people were asking me, where is he? Where is he? And I would just say, he wasn't feeling good, so he stayed home, but I decided to still bring Layla and I out to come and celebrate the New Year, not knowing that we were done. I was done with him. At this point, it was game on. It was time for me to figure out my exit plan. So fast forward to March, I finally told my mother it was time for me to leave. Layla hadn't turned 1 yet. This was March, and so Layla would have been 6 months or so, 6 or 7 months. So I put the house on the market because I knew that at this point he thought that was, our home, his home. And I knew that he would never, if I divorced him and still kept that home, he would never just leave. So I convinced him that we were gonna get something new, that it was time to move out of the city and, move elsewhere. So I put the house on the market and he was for it, because at the time I was married, he had to sign off on it and I needed his signature to sign off on the house, even though I bought that home before he and I were married. He had to, at this point I was married, he had to sign off on it. So by April or May, that house got sold and I moved back in. I was going to move downtown, but my mother knew that he had shown some signs of crazy and wasn't comfortable with Layla and I leaving and moving, and he would potentially get access to us, and she didn't know where his mindset was at, so she didn't she didn't want me to live outside of her eyesight. You know, I guess she felt like that was going to be her protection mechanism from him, because she knew that he would never try anything in front of her, because he was all about the facade. So I moved back in with my mom. Layla and I moved back in with my mom, and we were going to ride this thing out, and I was going to take care of my baby. By that August, now mind you, I moved out. I told you I sold the house in April, May. By that August, I had filed for divorce. And I didn't file for divorce yet. I was going to file for a divorce. I knew that by that time I had made up in my mind that it was time to file for divorce.